Hi, I'm Tom Fournier, speaking on behalf of the History Symposium. And following my video, we're going to see a series of little video clips from each of the four speakers for our upcoming conference, where the theme is famous Napoleonic figures not named Napoleon or Wellington. So what's really fun with these clips, you see the passion that our speakers have for history and for the person that they're going to speak on. And for us, this is really fun. We get to take a deeper slice and look in detail at some famous people that I'm going to hazard a guess that a lot of folks really don't know a whole lot about. So check out each of these individual clips, and then I do hope you can join us for the conference on February the 25th, 2023. And if you can't join us for the day, then be sure to check out our YouTube channel, where recordings for each of the talks will be available shortly after the presentations. Have fun. Take care. Bye.
So, hello, people. My name is Beatrice de Graaf. I'm professor at Utrecht University, and I will be telling you something about my favorite figure in the Napoleonic period, and that is a female figure. And she is known as Napoleon's stepdaughter. She's also known as the Dutch's first queen ever. And she also could be described as a king and an emperor maker. It's Eugénie Hortense de Beauharnais. She was the daughter of General Alexander Vicomte de Beauharnais and Josephine Taché de la Pagerie, who was, since 1796, the wife to Napoleon. So Hortense was practically being adopted by Napoleon, and she grew up to be perhaps one of his most true and loyal admirers to the end. And I will also share with you something that I discovered in the archives myself. She was not just a daughter or a wife or a stepdaughter in the corridors behind the power. She was also very much in power herself. The term kingmaker is not invented for nothing. And she also became of that the target of the first European Central Intelligence Agency that was set up in Paris in 1815 at the time of the Allied occupation of France. And this Allied service saw in Hortense a true threat to the post-Napoleonic order and the concept of Europe. So the question that I will be discussing is, who was Hortense really? Why could she be considered a kingmaker? And why did people like Tsar Alexander and Metternich consider her a threat to Europe? And if you want to know more, please join me at the conference.
That sounds awesome. I want you to go on now, but I can wait until the 25th. Thank you, Beatrice.
My name's Andrew Field, author on the Battle of Waterloo, and I'm going to be talking about the Prince of Orange. Now, in the 100 or so years since Waterloo, most histories were very Anglo-centric, and they sort of portrayed the victory as being achieved in spite of, rather than with the help of, the foreign contingents that made up actually what was the majority of Wellington's army. Many of these contingents were described by many British officers as cowards who ran away at the first shot. But it's really only in the last 30 years or so that more balanced accounts have tried to reassess the contribution of these different contingents. Now, the most senior officer, or the most senior of the foreign officers that served under Wellington's command, was the Prince of Orange. And he seems to have acquired a reputation as a bumbling, incompetent, upper-class twit. There's rather been more difficult for him to shake that reputation off, not least because of the well-known books and TV series of Bernard Cornwell Sharp, a staple of anyone who's interested in the Napoleonic Wars. But even in more serious British histories, he's portrayed as a sort of grossly over-promoted, militarily inexperienced youth whose incompetence and lack of tactical understanding sent many British soldiers needlessly to their deaths. Now, he was only 22 years old at Waterloo, and yet he was already a full general in both the British and the Netherlands army. Hardly someone who's likely to have accrued a substantial military experience that would fit him for high command. But despite this, outside the Netherlands, little is known of his education, his military background, in order to make a more balanced judgment. And so what I want to talk about is to look into that background a little bit. Okay, so was the Prince of Orange, was his reputation, his poor reputation really earned? Or was he just another casualty of British arrogance?
Well, thank you, Andrew. We really look forward to your talk, and it's going to be a great contribution to what I think is a fantastic day.
Hi, I'm Alex Mikeveridze, and I have the honor of being invited to participate in this wonderful history symposium. And I will be arguing in favor of Jean-Jacques Régis Cambacérès, a fascinating individual whom some scholars describe as the second most important man in France. And I think I tend to agree with that assessment, because for a better part of a decade, if you count just Napoleonic Wars, or 2 decades if you include French Revolutionary and Napoleonic era, Cambacérès figured very conspicuously, very prominently in political, cultural, and legal changes and transformations that took place in France. He had a fascinating career, starting as the deputy to the States General in 1789, then actively participating in the events and activities of the National Convention, becoming at one point president of it. Then, of course, he became the Minister of Justice under the Directory, and it was Cambacérès that Napoleon Bonaparte chose as to be his second consul after the famous coup of 18 Brumaire. And here, during the consulate, Cambacérès really shone as a talented administrator, as a brilliant lawyer. And in fact, I think we can say that he was responsible to a greater degree for many of the reforms that later on Napoleon will be given credit for. Not the least of them being the great legal reform that culminated in the Code Napoleon, right, the famous Napoleonic Code. It's Cambacérès who plays the lead role in drafting the legal provisions of the code. In fact, he was an active member of the earlier commissions that were tasked with that legal reform. But besides the legal reorganization, Cambacérès was a key administrative figure in the French Empire. He played a crucial role in helping Napoleon consolidate his power in the early years of his rule, so during the consulate years from 1800 to 1804, and then, of course, during the empire, the height of the empire from 1804 to about 1812. It is Cambacérès who serves as the president of the Senate, and Senate was a very important institution of imperial rule, and as an arch-chancellor of the empire. So it reminds me of this rather fascinating expression that French historian Pierre-François Pinault used towards Cambacérès when he says that Cambacérès during the empire was more than number 2, but less than number 1. That here you have this crucial figure who, in the absence of Napoleon, effectively is in charge of administrative bureaucracy of the empire, but yet is always kind of in the shadow of the emperor himself. And so my talk will be devoted to exploring the life and travails of Cambacérès. There are many interesting nuggets to his personality, especially in his personal life, because he was a homosexual living in a period where homosexuality was in many parts of Europe illegal, and of course subjected to discrimination and persecution. And that kind of becomes an interesting part of his own experiences as a person, as an individual living in the revolutionary era. Look forward to seeing you in February.
He sounds fascinating. I really look forward to the talk. Thank you, Alex.
My name's Everett Rummage. I'm the host of the Age of Napoleon podcast, and I'm going to be talking about Toussaint Louverture. Louverture was the leader of the Haitian Revolution, the only successful slave rebellion in history. So obviously that makes him quite notable. But more than that, he was a person who, in middle age, not having previously had any experience of the military or politics, rose to be one of the most effective leaders of the era. So I want to look at the context that he came from, put his achievements, measure the scale of his achievements, and look at how he was able to build himself up into a leader of this movement that ultimately successfully overthrew the French colonial government.
Awesome. Well, we really look forward to that.